I got Pirate and I got Zeezy. Zeezy, you are going to go first. You guys know the time limits. You guys know the rules. You guys know everything. We are 3 weeks into this, so we ready to rock and roll. The first topic we got is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar versus Shaquille O'Neal. Who was more dominant?
So for me, originally when I saw the question, I immediately looked at Kareem, but then I had to reread the question and I was like, oh, it says dominant. So when I think about dominance, especially physical dominance in NBA history, the most dominant player that comes to mind is Shaquille O'Neal. This is a guy who walked into the league averaging 23, 14, and 3.5 blocks on 56% shooting from the field in his rookie year. This is a guy who they had to literally Shaq-proof backboards for because he was taking goals down with him after throwing down monstrous dunks. When I look at Shaquille O'Neal, especially in the early 90s, I don't want to get into peak Shaq until round 2, but especially in the early 90s, this is a guy that was walking into the league and for his first 14 years gave you 26, 12, and 3 with 3 blocks. This is a guy that was a stat stuffer or a box score stuffer, if you will. This is a guy that when you look at any other player within like 5 to 7 feet, or at least within the restricted area, there's no other center in NBA history that I'd rather throw the ball to than Shaquille O'Neal. When you factor in the fact that he was that damn tall and that damn big, but that had that light of footwork, not to mention the fact that his drop step was virtually deadly. If he got the shake on you, he was going to throw that shit down regardless. So when I look at Shaquille O'Neal and the peak of his dominance, it really starts to hit in the 2000s. But when I look at him in the 90s, that was a guy that was blossoming. This was a guy that went up against a 32-year-old Hakeem Olajuwon and gave you 28, 13, and 6 on 60% shooting at 23 years old in his first NBA Finals. That was nothing more than just a testament to come, which we'll get into in round 2. But off rip, got to go Shaq, most dominant.
Okay. We off to a hot start. Pirate, it's on you now.
All right, yeah. I mean, when you're talking dominance, especially at the center position, you got to look at both sides of the ball. And that's where Kareem really runs away with this thing. Now, Kareem made 11 all-defensive teams, where Shaq only made 3. And all 3 of Shaq's selections were second teams. Kareem made 5 first-team all-defense. Shaq never made 1 first-team all-defense his entire career. And there's honestly no one to blame but himself. He should have been a defensive monster. And he would have been if he had mixed in a fucking salad from time to time instead of ordering extra butter on his French fries at every meal. And that points to dedication, which everyone who saw his career play out knows that Shaq left a ton on the table. That's why many old guys like me, and even his very own cousin, Chill, have Wilt and Kareem over Shaq. Now, just look at the decline in the hustle. His best year blocking the ball was as a rookie, never to come close again. His best year rebounding the ball was as a rookie. Shaq was a gazelle as a rookie. And then came an avalanche of fudge and gravy IVs at halftime and girth-related injuries. Shaq only had 4 years he played at least 76 games. Kareem had 17. So while Shaq was busy dominating all the all-you-can-eat Chinese buffets in town, Kareem dominated both sides of the ball for a good 15 years. Which Shaq didn't do it. He didn't have near the longevity or the dominance that Kareem did.
That was a good appetizer round, Zeezy. Can we get into the meat and potatoes now? It's on you.
So I like the fact that you brought up, Shaq's deficiencies and what we looked at and said he could have improved upon, which you are 100% right when it comes to defense. But when I look at overall dominance, especially when it comes to Shaquille O'Neal and what separates him from most other centers, it's mostly for me field goal percentage. When I look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who played 20 years, Shaquille O'Neal, who played about 18. Shaq led the league in field goal percentage 10 times. Kareem only did that once. And it's crazy because both those guys both have 2 scoring titles, if I'm not mistaken, for a career that spanned both of them over 15 plus years. So when you really think about it and you start breaking down the peaks of their powers, a lot of people like to point to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1972. And when you look at the centers that he was going up against at that time, you had an aging Wilt Chamberlain, Dave Cowens, Nate Thurman. When I look at Shaquille O'Neal in 2000, especially that 2000 MVP and the guys that he was going up against in that era, the dead ball era, one of the greatest, if not the greatest defensive era in all of NBA, he was going up against guys like Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan, who were taking away some of those all defensive teams from Shaquille O'Neal. And when you look back at the Minnesota Timberwolves, especially in the early 2000s, especially early 2000s Kevin Garnett, net, you'll understand the difference in defense for both of those players. But that still didn't change the fact that Shaquille O'Neal was giving you multiple years of averaging over 3 blocks a game. So while, yeah, he didn't make All-NBA first team, there's no argument that if you drove in, you weren't still going to get your shit sent by that 350-pound gorilla. So it is what it is. When I look at Shaquille O'Neal in 2000 to 2002, throughout the postseason, he gave you 30, 15, and 3 blocks for that 3-year stretch in all of those postseasons. What does that spell? Dominance.
All right, Pirate, how are you going to rebuttal this?
I mean, I'm sad, Ron. Now I feel sad because this is the part of the show where we got to explain to everybody how there really ain't no Santa Claus. See, a lot of people like to talk real slanderous about the competition of days gone by. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the harsh reality is Shaq beat up on more broken down white guys than any center in history. Shaq's comp had so many busted up knees and backs that they couldn't even be plumbers if they tried. So Shaq played 12 series during that three-peat. Let's go over every center involved in that three-peat. Shaq beat Vlade Divac 3 times at age 32, 33, and 34. He beat Arvydas Sabonis twice when he was 35 and 36 years old. He beat David Robinson twice when he was 35 and 36 years old. He beat Rick Smits when he was 34 years old. He beat a 33-year-old Cliff Robinson. He beat a 31-year-old Luke Longley. He beat a Portland team that didn't even have a center on the roster. He beat Todd McCulloch and Jason Collins, and then he beat a 35-year-old Mutombo. And that is it. That's all the centers he played in that entire three-peat. Not one single great center in his prime. The closest thing was the 35-year-old Mutombo, who only had one good year in the league afterwards. Now, I'm just the messengers, all right? So don't shoot me. We all love Shaq, but let's be honest. Any great center with Kobe and LA in that situation is probably going to do the exact same thing. Kareem beat Nate Thurman in his prime, Wilt Chamberlain.
I got to mute you, Pirate. Your time is up. Zeezy is back to you. Round 3 of topic 1. Talk to us.
So to say that any center would have been able to dominate the same way that Shaq is kind of a little bit of a stretch to me, especially when you look at just how much he was dominating. In the 2000 finals, he gave you 38 points a game and 17 rebounds on 61% shooting from the field. Like I said before, Kareem played 20 years and only led the league in field goal percentage 1 time. And when you look at Shaquille O'Neal, he did it 10 times. And when you look at Shaquille O'Neal being a 60% from the field type of player, he did that stat more times than Kareem did in his 20-year career. Then when you look at the 2001 finals, he gave you 33, 16, 5, and 4 blocks a game on 57% shooting from the field. So of course, I like that you brought up the fact that he went up against Rick Smits and the 35-year-old Dikembe Mutombo, who was Defensive Player of the Year that year, which counts for something. So when I look at that and I think about the fact that there were literal instances where teams in their off seasons through those years of peak Shaq 2000, 2002, that were getting players, big men especially, as insurance policies just because they needed bodies to be able to withstand the Shaq attack. The closest analogy that I have to that is like the Houston Rockets in 2018 building their team to just stop the Warriors. That was the majority of teams in the league in the early 2000s. Instead, they weren't stopping a team. They were trying to stop a diesel in Shaquille O'Neal, because what you had with Shaquille O'Neal was a guy that not only could give you the points, the rebounds, and the blocks, but the efficiency as well, with an ability to pass out of double teams better than most all time that size. Not Nikola Jokic.
Let's go, Pirate. Talk to us. It's your 3rd round.
Yeah, so I mean, relying on efficiency really isn't a winning strategy, because the mere fact that Kareem was a better free throw shooter gives him a better true shooting. They're very close in efficiency. But now we're talking about dominance. Let's go over the obligatory achievements, and 1.5 minutes ain't enough. So MVP 6 for Kareem, 1 for Shaq. Rings 6 for Kareem, 4 for Shaq. First team NBA 10 for Kareem, 8 for Shaq. All defense, 11 for Kareem, 3 for Shaq. First team defense, 5 for Kareem, 0 for Shaq. Kareem averaged more points, more rebounds, more assists, more steals, and more blocks. Kareem also got more total points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Every category higher averages, and totals. And of course, Kareem has a higher VORP than Shaq. Kareem led the NBA in VORP 7 times. Shaq did it once. Kareem led the playoffs in scoring 5 times. Shaq did it once. Kareem led the playoffs in blocks 6 times, despite them not counting blocks for his first 4 years. Shaq did it once. Kareem had a higher true shooting percentage than Shaq. He was a 72% shooter at the line. Shaq was a brick at the line. Shaq was so bad at the line that one of the most obvious strategies was developed to specifically target his weakness. You can't hack a Kareem, but you can most definitely hack a Shaq. So to be clear, every single fucking page of NBA history, Kareem dominated. And that's the question, right? Who dominated? Kareem dominated. He dominated the NBA. He dominated Shaq in every statistical, every achievement, every way you can possibly measure a basketball player. Kareem dominated.
All right, here we go. Put up the poll. Y'all get over and vote. We are moving on to the next topic. Pirate, your timer will start whenever you do. Let's go.
All right. So first off, I'd like to welcome everyone all aboard the Minnesota OKC train. Reminder, I'm that old chunk of coal who said last summer these two teams would be top of the West. So welcome anyway. So when you're talking about who's going to win a ring, sad fact is, unless you have a generational team, each year 97% of the league is going to lose. So odds are neither are going to win. But when forecasting teams to win a championship, there are a few common pits that people can fall down. Number one is putting too much faith in young, talented teams to get it done. Sad reality is uncertainty compounds exponentially so much each year that it's really impossible to say where a team will be 3 to 4 years from now. History is littered with good young teams that never made it. Count up all of KD's rings in OKC. So you really can't look more than a couple years down the line in most all situations. So OK's youth isn't really the plus that many may give to them. In a few of the more concrete indicators of future success, Minnesota is in a better place. Their number one is defense. Defense is much more likely to carry over year to year, assuming you don't lose any defensive linchpin. In the last 40 years, 25 of the champions have had a higher ranked defense than they had offense. Only a couple champs were outside of the top 10, and most were firmly inside the top 5. 25 of the last 40 champs have had a top 5 defense. Defense is perhaps the surest indicator.
Pirate, that is your time, my man. I had to mute you. Zeezy, it's back on you. Go ahead. Your minute 30 starts when you do.
So we talk about defense. That was the one thing that Pirate harped on a lot in that 1 minute and 30 seconds. And I look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that was 57-25, best record in the Western Conference last year, and I believe a top 5 defense in the league. And one thing that Oklahoma City has over Minnesota, a lot of the time when you really look at it on base level, is age and assets and player development and things, and an MVP caliber leader in SGA. When you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder and the assets that they were able to acquire since getting SGA, and then you look at the build upon build of year after year that they've been going throughout this rebuild, for me personally, I looked at them in 2022 and said, what are they actually missing? And then I said, Chet Holmgren, when he actually gets back and plays a full healthy season, is going to give them that benefit of being a defensive anchor along with being another option on offense, which is exactly what he was able to give you. When I look at Jalen Williams' development from year 1 to year 2, shooting splits going up from field goal percentage to 3-point to free throw, and he's playing roughly the same exact amount of minutes. So that tells you that player development is kicking in relatively quickly for Oklahoma City to be able to capitalize on what they have over there. So for me, you say that defense, it wins championships, which it does. But when I look at Minnesota, they put all their chips on the table for Rudy Gobert, and the same issues that plagued him through postseason runs from Utah ended up plaguing him again this year, where he's getting played off the court because him in one-on-one situations is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for his ass to end up on Shaq in the Fool every single time. So when I look at Oklahoma City, their issues are not the same as Minnesota.
Round 2. Take it away, Pirate.
Well, yeah, I mean, just once again, the youth, is not really the plus that you might think it is. The second major factor for projecting champions that Minnesota has the edge on is that they have been, knocking at the door, so to speak, which again is a heavy indicator based on NBA history. Virtually no NBA champs have been able to cut in line, so to speak, where the core is a bunch of young players who haven't taken their licks, gone to the playoffs, get bounced, come back, try again. That's the general pattern in the NBA. OKC has such a young core with little experience that you really have to go all the way back to 1977 with Bill Walton's Blazers to find a similarly comprised, youthful, and inexperienced team that went on to win the championship. Odds are OKC still needs some more time in the oven, where Minnesota has the more classical look of a blend of older players, older proven players mixed with guys just hitting their prime, who've taken their licks in the playoffs together and may be ready to finally break through. So Minnesota's a more mature team, the more experienced team. They have a young rising star. You want to see it in a potential champ. Again, going back to the defense, defense probably the number one indicator for a champ. They've got the reigning depoy. A lot of people don't like him, but it is a fact. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels. At this age, you would forecast progression much more likely than regression. They have coaching continuity. So, yeah, the odds are very good that Minnesota will again.
Pirate, you're overtime one more time, but it's okay. Here we go. Zeezy, round 2, talk to us.
So when you talk about experience for Minnesota, how much experience do they really have over Oklahoma City because they made it to a Western Conference Finals? That was cute, but really what you have to look at when you look at Minnesota is what they're really going to have going forward. When you look at Oklahoma City, the biggest issue for this team last year was the fit of Josh Giddey. That was the main issue. In the offseason, they replaced Josh Giddey with a 30-year-old Alex Caruso, who was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league and helps them on the three-point from the perimeter, something that Josh Giddey wasn't able to do either of those options. And then when you look at Minnesota, they have Rudy Gobert for another couple of years. By the time his contract ends, he'll be 32. They have Karl Anthony Towns locked in until I believe 2027 or 2028, in which he will be about 32 years old. So the second option for Minnesota is Karl Anthony Towns, who we know for his limited experience for the postseason is a playoff dropper. Not something that you can really bank on if you want your offense to really be clicking the same way your defense was in the regular season. And then when we talk about defense, like I mentioned before, the Oklahoma City Thunder were a top 5 defense last year. Chet Holmgren was second in total blocks in the regular season and first in total and blocks per game in the playoffs. What Oklahoma City did by getting rid of Josh Giddey, bringing in Alex Caruso, re-signing guys like Aaron Wiggins, bringing in guys like Isaiah Joe, Cason Wallace, and the crew. What they have is they went from a team that was really young and exciting to a team that has a bunch of elite defensive options, not to mention their MVP player who plays two-way better than most guards in the game today. So when you look at the future, it seems like it's brighter for the Thunder.
Zeezy cooking up. Pirate, how you going to come this third round?
Yeah, it sucks. I can't see the clock, but oh well. So just to reiterate, Minnesota is the more mature team, more experienced team. They have a young rising star that you want to see in a potential champ. They got the pieces with Edwards, McDaniels, Towns, Gobert to again have at least a top 3 defense, if not number 1. Yeah, the Dallas thing happened, but fuck it, shit happens. They got OKC too. Towns is still one of the greatest shooting bigs of all time. You would like to think at some point he can really put a run together. Edwards is in a prime position, take a solid leap as much as anyone in the game. Hopefully enough to get that team offense up enough to be a real legit threat paired with the defense. Again, at this stage, OKC's youth is most likely still going to be more of a negative than a positive. If you go off every historical trend in the NBA, you really don't know who all and what all players on OKC will stay together past the next couple of years. Guys will need to get paid. Decisions will have to be made. So in just the next couple of years, I'd say Minnesota has the firmer base to build off of to maybe crack through and win a ring. They've got the defense. They will probably have the better defense. They've got the continuity, coaching and player-wise. They've got the blend of solid veterans and youth just hitting their prime. They've got the superstar player on the verge of a.
Pirates, your time is up. Zeezy, your time is starting when you do.
So for me, you brought up contracts and how that's going to be a factor going forward. But I think that Minnesota's contract negotiations are going to be more of a deterrent for them in what they're trying to accomplish, which ultimately is this question: who will win a championship first? When you look at Minnesota, they have situations that will pop up. Like, what are they going to do with Karl Anthony Towns? Because Karl Anthony Towns is literally on his third or fourth big three for this franchise. You remember the years of Zach LaVine and Andrew Wiggins. You remember the years of Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler. Now we're all the way up to here with Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid. Mind you, you said that their age for the Thunder was going to be a detriment for them. I don't think so, because if I'm not mistaken, were they the youngest one seed in NBA history or second youngest? So when you look at that and you think about what the Minnesota Timberwolves have to deal with going forward, they have two 36-year-olds on their team, and Mike Conley and I believe Joe Ingles. The oldest player on the Oklahoma City Thunder is Alex Caruso, who's 30. So when you look at that and you think about contract negotiations and player development, which is a big part of all of this, when you look at guys like Jalen Williams, when you look at role players like Cason Wallace and and Aaron Wiggins, right? When you look at guys like Alex Caruso and what the impact he's going to bring standing next to a Lou Dort. We look at Lou Dort and we say Dorcher Chamber, Dorcher Chamber, Dorcher Chamber. Imagine that and Alex Caruso and SGA on the perimeter giving you hell, switching every single screen. It's a problem. And then you factor in the fact that Jalen Williams is only going to continue to get better along with Chet Holmgren. And what you'll eventually have is a solidified big three, where in Minnesota, you got guys that are literally going to just be falling off year by year.
Let's run the polls. So we've had 2 landslides so far. Let's see if we can make this one a little closer. Zeezy, the time will start whenever you do, my friend.
All right, so this one's a tough one because I love Haliburton and I love De'Aaron Fox. And like Pirate said in the first round when we were talking about Kareem and Shaq, there are two sides to the basketball, which is why I'm leaning more towards De'Aaron Fox. I mean, when I look at Fox, this is a guy who is the much better defender between the two. And you're asking about building your team around one or the other. When I look at Tyrese Haliburton, a situation that could pop up like it did in the playoffs is Haliburton being put on the island by himself and being exposed for not being able to guard a parked car. Whereas De'Aaron Fox has that, not only that motor and that will to want to be a good defender, but the ability to not just do that, but create his own shot when need be. When you look at De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton, the biggest thing that's going to sway people one way or the other is do you value shooting and playmaking, or do you value scoring ability and defense? That's what this is all boiling down to. And when I look at De'Aaron Fox on the season last year, he was able to give you 47% from the field on 21 attempts, which is crazy, but that's what he was able to give you, along with shooting 37% from 3 on 8 attempts. And for De'Aaron Fox, when you look at his career besides last season, this was a guy that notoriously struggled from 3, but being that this was his highest volume of attempts from 3, he was able to produce 37% clip. That's pretty damn good. When I look at Tyrese Haliburton, he gave you 47% from the field as well throughout the regular season on 15 attempts and 36%. That's right, 1% less from 3 than De'Aaron Fox on the same exact amount of attempts. So when it really comes down to is that De'Aaron Fox is ascending when it comes to expanding his game, and Haliburton isn't the same type of player in that regard.
Take it away, Pirate.
Well, I didn't expect the defensive angle for De'Aaron Fox, but now, no offense to Big Ox and the other 5 Kings fans of America, but Sacramento has never been known for the best brain trust on personnel decisions, and pretty sure this is another one of them picking the wrong guy. When you look at what player you want to build a franchise around, I think you're looking at age and ability, what they've done, what they're reasonably expected to do, their reasonable floor and ceiling, and how easily their game can mesh with others to maximize the options of filling out the roster around them. So Haliburton is the pretty clear answer there. He's 2.5 years younger. He's already got a better VORP. He's excelling at the most fundamental and valuable skills his position requires. He's efficient and productive distribution and efficient and productive perimeter scoring. At his age, he's already compiling a stat line that is historic, hitting a combination of benchmarks that literally no other player in NBA history has hit. And that fundamental skill set allows you to pair Tyrese with a wider variety of teammates, especially in the backcourt. Being a bigger guard who is perimeter-oriented is far more versatile, and I'll illustrate it just with this clear point. Tyrese can reasonably share the backcourt with another guard like Fox or another guard like himself, whereas Fox cannot reasonably share the backcourt with another guard like himself. It's not going to work. The size and the the scoring options, the defense are not going to work. And again, to focus on Fox.
Pirate had to step in. Your time is up. I know that minute 30 go by quick, but Zeezy, round 2, it's on you.
So another element of De'Aaron Fox's game that I ended up gravitating towards was not only is he able to create his own shot and be pretty efficient, especially on a high amount of volume, is the fact that he's a fourth quarter dog. When we look at De'Aaron Fox last year, he was second in fourth quarter scoring. Tyrese Haliburton wasn't even top 25. And so for me, if you're talking about building your franchise around one specific player, the fact that De'Aaron Fox has the ability to not only take over games when your star player needs to the most, but to be effective in those moments, that's going to kind of sway me more towards De'Aaron Fox. And to the defensive point, I said it before, if you have a motor or a will to play defense, that is something that a front office is going to look at over a guy that may not have that same will or that ability to do so. When I look at De'Aaron Fox, the fact that this guy was able to turn around that Sacramento organization with the help of Domantas Sabonis, of course, but leading one of the top 3 offenses in the league during their little Cinderella one last year. Shout out to you, Ox. I know you like that, but it is what it is. When I look at that, I think to myself, De'Aaron Fox is a leader, right? He is a guy that can score at will. He is a guy that does not mind playing both sides of the ball. And he is a guy that overall can really affect the course of the game in the biggest moments of the game where you need him to the most. And that is the fourth quarter. Like I said, Tyrese Haliburton wasn't even top 25 in fourth quarter scoring last year. And to your point about, availability as well, Tyrese Haliburton was missing some games last year as well. That was the reason why he couldn't really fulfill a lot of the obligations to his team. But De'Aaron Fox is going to be there as well. He has that ability.
Zeezy, had to mute you. Your time is up. Pirate is back on you. Let's do it.
Well, I mean, talking about playoffs, Fox is about to be 28. He's got one playoff series in his career he lost. So I brought up how Tyrese is thus far putting up a legitimately unique and historic stat line. And Fox's game leaves something to be desired in long-term team success. So let's go over that. Simply put, when you're talking about a point guard who, 1, sets up his teammates, 2, doesn't turn the ball over, and 3, shoots the ball very well on a very good volume, no player in history has done it quite like Haliburton. So to that point, the last couple of years, Hallie has been 20-plus points, 10-plus assists, less than 2.5 turnovers, and 40% from 3 on 7 threes a game. To be clear, no player in history has hit that combination of thresholds. So now, maybe those numbers aren't quite explosive enough to tickle your titties, and that's cool, to each his own. But personally, you start talking about a tall 20-10 point guard with low turnovers and high efficiency, and I personally get a severe case of the vapors. So just to be well aware that no player in NBA history has put up the same profile that Haliburton has already crafted, let alone what may be to come, considering he's still only 24 years old. Again, he's much younger than Fox, and we're talking about building a player to start a franchise. So the prototypical skills, the age, and the ability to mesh with teammates, they all favor Haliburton.
All right, here we go. That was 2 rounds or 3?
That was 2.
That was 2?
Yeah, this is the third one.
All right, here we go. Third round, ZZ. Talk to us, my man.
Well, I said it before a little bit. I touched on it a little bit in the first round. But last year in the regular season, what you saw from De'Aaron Fox in comparison to Tyrese Haliburton was essentially the same exact efficiency on the same attempts from 3 and a higher efficiency higher attempts from the field. With Tyrese Haliburton, an issue that you will run into, which is what this Indiana Pacers team ran into last year in the postseason, was for as much as we were hyping up how phenomenal their offense was, and remember, people were trying to put Tyrese Haliburton in those conversations based off of like a 2-week run. I fell victim to that too. I'm not excluding myself. But what I did was, after those 2 weeks of fame were up, I started to reevaluate what Tyrese Haliburton really is as a player. And what that is yes, he can shoot the ball. Yes, he can facilitate. But with De'Aaron Fox, what you have is a guy that is willing to put the team on his back when needed to, i.e. the fourth quarter. When you look at De'Aaron Fox and what he did for Sacramento, for example, in that 2023 run to the playoffs, he was the clear-cut leader of that squad. Yes, Sabonis was able to bring them a different versatility at the big man position, but De'Aaron Fox was spearheading all of that. And if De'Aaron Fox needed to set up guys like Keegan Murray or guys like Harrison fucking Barnes, I hate that man, but even in situations like that, he could do that. All right. So when I look at that and I think to myself, you have a guy in De'Aaron Fox who not only can create his own shot, can take over a game, can play better defense. Those are things that you can build around and put together all of the other little pieces that you need to. Imagine if Sabonis was a better defender on the interior, the Kings would have probably went farther in the playoffs in 2023.
Round 3, Pirates, your last case argument. Talk to us.
Yeah, so I mean, talking about threes, they're not the same shots. Fox, the vast majority, over 66% of his threes are assisted. Haliburton's, the majority of his shots he creates at the top of the arc. They're not the same. So with Fox, you've got a good dynamic player that just isn't as fundamentally sound in many of the key areas as Haliburton. Across the board for his career, Fox has been a below league average efficiency scorer. Well, Haliburton for his career has been an above league average efficiency scorer across the board, and the gap is sizable. It's more than the full 10-point difference in their EFG plus. Now, Fox did have an uptick last year. That's fair enough, but 1 year is not a trend, and Fox is older. And just going off their careers, you would expect Haliburton to continue to simply be the more efficient scorer. Fox simply isn't at the same level as a passer. Vast majority of his threes come assisted, where Haliburton scores the majority of his threes. He creates himself. Fact is, Fox is a shorter player who takes almost 70% of his shots from either 14 feet in or at the corners. Now, neither are going to win a default anytime soon. Defense is not really that relevant, but this style of player for Fox, a shorter guard who shoots high volume, mainly inside, simply has a certain built-in disadvantages in regard to team defense, and that's a big reason why he's only cracked top 20 team defense in his entire career. If you have a little guard who is dribbling and shooting a lot around the paint.
Sorry, Pirate. As much as I would have loved to let you get that last part off, we got to run the polls because your time is up. Go ahead and vote on this final topic. Tyrese Haliburton versus De'Aaron Fox. Who would you rather build your team around?
Zeezy, I didn't even bring up because I felt a lot of the younger people wouldn't care about college stats. But, back in the day, college really mattered. When you were going to college for 4 years, and I mean, Kareem just dominated college too. So when you add that to what he was also able
I got to step in, fellas, because we started late. So we got to move on because we got to get to this next battle. But it looks like Pirate run the live vote for the last one with 57% of the votes. Remember, the live vote isn't the end all be all. You guys get here and vote after the video. Just leave a comment, say I got Zeezy or I got Pirate, and those votes will count towards this battle and will determine who actually wins. Fellas, appreciate you guys. We are going to take a quick intermission, and we'll be right back for John D versus Gifted.
It's the player choice way. Yeah, them boys don't get it started. The player choice way. The player choice way. Come and switch lanes into the player choice way.